All right, let's see if this is working. All right. How's this? Can you hear me? All right. Maybe that's better. Let's see. Uh, okay. Let's see if we can go from here. I'm hearing myself echo in my head, which is kind of annoying, but let me see if I can turn that off. Um, Monitor off. Should be okay. All right. So it works a little bit. I'm going to see if I can avoid the monitoring here. Let's see here. Audio. Take this out. Welcome, everybody. Sorry for the technical difficulties. It's a different kind of setup today because I'm using OBS, which I normally don't use. And yeah, so we'll see if we can get this sorted the way we want to get it sorted. Let some people join in a little bit. I think there's a lot of people coming over to this one from the old one. So let's see if we've got. All right. In the meantime, while everybody's just coming in, let me see if I can switch around on the views, changing up the views. All right. So this should be okay on this view. Howdy, Boredbrain joining in, which is great. This echo in my ear is going to make me absolutely crazy, but we'll see what we can do. Yeah, let's see if I can turn down my monitoring. Yes, OBS is different. So, all right. So today we're going to talk about. Let me see if I can pull this out so I don't have to listen to it in both ears. Today we're going to talk about the Xcelon. Now that we're finally able to get in here, so you guys can see a little bit about what this thing is, and yeah, we can talk a little bit about this cool mixer. So I know everybody has a ton of questions about this, so we will. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys want to put into the chat. I think we also have Adam from Boredbrain in the chat, so he will be able to answer all of the technical questions that that I don't know the answers to. So yeah, so just want to double check that you guys can all still hear the audio because I switched over to a different view, but just to make sure that that's going well. Let's see. Yeah, we got a few more people joining in, which is pretty cool. So, it's actually not feeding back to me now. Oh, so it is feeding back a little bit. Yeah, it is feeding back a little bit. Can you guys still hear the audio? Just let me know in the chat if you were still able to hear the audio. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Peter. So Xcelon SL, just a little bit of a disclaimer at the beginning. I was, got to know the guys at Boredbrain about almost 2 years ago now. I met them at one of the trade shows, and I ended up speaking with Adam, and he asked me this question, which kind of seemed like harmless at the moment. He said, kind of, what's missing, or what would you like to see in the performance world? And I said, what's really missing is a desktop mixer that's really geared towards live performance. And that's not modular, and that's not a DJ mixer, and that's not a studio mixer, but it's actually a performance mixer, but that's desktop. And he kind of smiled and he was like, oh, that's funny because I've been thinking about one of those for a while. We should talk. And so we ended up talking, and that turned into almost 2 years of us talking on a pretty regular basis. And he had this great idea for this mixer, showed it to me, and I was just blown away. And then we started getting into the details about what would be cool to see, what would be useful for live performers, and how things should be implemented. And so we kind of went back and forth, and he had some amazing ideas and amazing technical abilities to make these ideas happen. So that's kind of how the Xcelon came to be. I mean, this was something that Adam had been thinking about for a really long time, and then we just kind of he wanted to bounce ideas, which was awesome. And it was such an honor for me to be included in the development process of this, because as I've mentioned to a few people before, sometimes when you get a piece of gear, you feel like you're kind of a victim of people's bad decisions. And you're like, man, why did they do it this way? Or why didn't they do it this way? Or it's just missing this, or I wish it had that, or why does it have this? No one would ever use that. And so it was nice to be able to be in that process where it could be, I could not only offer input, but also hear from the other side, like, oh, here's why it's done this way. This is what's important. So anyway, it was a great process, and it was very exciting. So more exciting than anything else. The amazing thing is that it's finally out in the open. It's been the hardest thing to not talk about this because I've been so excited about it for a while. So what is the Xcelon SL? So kind of starting with the DNA of the Xcelon mixer that's a modular mixer. The idea was to take the best things about that, bring it into a desktop mixer, and then expand on it into all of the things that electronic live musicians need, but without any of the stuff that you don't need. There's a lot of mixers out there that have a lot of things in them, but they're not necessarily the things that we need for electronic music live performance. They're made for DJs, or they're made for studio work, made for mixing production and all of that stuff. So this is really made to live kind of in that area where we live, where hardware live performers live. And so what the Xcelon is at its core is 100% analog mixer. So everything's analog. So one of the questions that we've been getting asked a whole bunch is, does it have an audio interface? Does it have USB out? Does it have any of that stuff? And the simple answer is no, because it's analog. So all of that stuff would require it to be digital or have converters or have some sort of a digital element to it. And the idea was to have a completely analog start to finish mixer for all the benefits of analog, but also some of the, for the non-analog purists, some of the benefits of it are, no firmware updates, no computer crashes, no, all of that stuff. Software doesn't get outdated. So having something that's analog is great for that. Plus, some of the features that it has, which we'll talk about in a sec. So what are the features? So it is an 8-channel, fully stereo mixer. Each one of those 8 channels can be set up to be 2 mono channels. So you can have 2 mono inputs in the back, and there's a crossfade mode, and you can then use the panning to crossfade between your 2 sources. That's something the Xcelon modular mixer has as well, and that kind of made it over to here. So it's 8 stereo channels, or it can be up to 16 mono inputs as well, with each pair sharing a channel strip. And in each one of the channel strips, this is where things get really interesting for hardware like performance, is each one of the channel strips has an analog drive circuit, which is also with the gain. Every button or every knob has dual function. So gain can also be switched to be analog drive. There's a tilt EQ, which tilt EQ basically going from ducking the lows and increasing the highs to the opposite. So you can make things brighter or darker with the tilt EQ. Then there's also a mid boost duck, and if you switch into that mode, you can boost and duck the mids. So if you want to scoop your mids to clean up your mix a little bit, or if you want to boost your mids because things are a little weak, or you want to boost a vocal or whatever, you can do that. There is also a compressor per channel. This is one thing that I've seen in some of the forums that's been kind of incorrect, is there is an individual compressor per channel, which is kind of a sound sculpting compressor. But then there is also a master sidechain, which is separate from those. So the master sidechain doesn't control those compressors. It's actually a separate thing unto itself. So each channel has its own compressor. There's also, the compressor has a couple different modes too. There's a punch mode and a kind of normal mode. Punch mode adjusts the attack to let through more transient, gives you a little bit more punch, adjusts the decay as well. And then the more traditional mode is kind of the more traditional compression. Then the sidechain, so the master sidechain, if you look in the image here, you can see just under the Boredbrain logo is all the sidechain controls. Those are individually assignable per channel. So if you look, there's a switch that says sidechain on, and you just switch that on for any side or any channel that you would like to be ducked by the sidechain. The trigger for the sidechain is normaled to channel 1 in the mixer, but then there's also an external sidechain audio input just above the meters there. So if you want to sidechain it from an external drum machine or from something else, you can do that. And when you plug into that, it overrides the channel 1, and then channel 1 just becomes a normal channel. That can be patched also from other channels, which I'll tell you about in just a sec. So that master sidechain is actually an envelope generator. And so there's a few things that are important with that. You can adjust the frequency, which is it's a highly resonant bandpass filter that as you move that around, you can select where you want the sidechain trigger to come from. So if you put in a drum mix, you can decide where you want, or what part of that mix you want to trigger the sidechain. So for example, if you're sidechaining just to duck your bass out of the way of your kick drum, you would just engage the sidechain on your bass channel. You would move that frequency down to the low end of your kick, and then you would have that duck your bass. If you wanted to have it be like kind of a really aggressive pumping kind of performance effect, you can engage the sidechain on every channel, have it that bandpass filter dialed into where the transient of the kick is, and then you add however much sidechain you want, and then you can duck everything and make it super pumpy and whatever. So a lot of control over that. Also, besides the frequency, there's a threshold, obviously, and then there's a decay, which is really handy because that controls. It's kind of like the the release of a compressor. So the decay, so as you go up in tempos, you can shorten the decay. So things will reset faster so that you can make it reset faster to match your tempo and kind of whatever you're doing at that moment. So that's that master sidechain section. Also in each channel, up at the top, you'll notice there's a 3.5 millimeter TRS. That's a stereo pre-fader output. So it's post EQ and post gain, but it's pre-fader. So that can be sent out if you wanted to multi-track your performances. You can send those out to a multi-track recorder. Like when I perform, I use a 1010 blue box, and I send multiple channels into the inputs of that and just hit record, play my show. And then at the end, I have everything multi-tracked in that on an SD card that I can just load into my computer. So you can do that with those channels. Those outputs can also be used to trigger the sidechain from a different channel. So let's say you have your kick on channel 5 and you want that to be where the sidechain comes from instead of 1. You can come out from that output into the sidechain in, and it'll trigger the sidechain from that channel. So handy for a bunch of different uses. It kind of it can be used for a ton of different things. Another thing that you'll notice down below the sidechain is the filter. And that filter is an analog, fully stereo DJ style filter. So like high pass, low pass DJ style. And what's interesting, and I'm sure Adam can chime in about this, but if I'm not wrong, there's 8 4-pole filters in that analog that are all interacting with one another to make that one high pass, low pass filter and make it smooth and sound good. The other interesting thing about the filter is that it has separate resonance for the high pass side and the low pass side. So you can control the resonance. So like when I play, I like to use a highly resonant high pass and a low resonance low pass. Just that's the sound that I like, but you can dial it in like that, however you like. And then as you perform, you can adjust it as well. Also in each channel, there is 2 stereo effect sends that are assignable to be either pre-fader or post-fader. So those are, again, stereo out and stereo returns as well. And then you also have the ability on each channel to assign it to different buses. So you have the A bus, the B bus, or the master bus. A and B are each stereo buses that are inserts on the back. So you can send out for different types of processing. So you can, send everything to A, all your drums to A, send those through a drum bus processing and back in, and then it goes out the main. So you can do bus processing. So basically there's 4 stereo send and returns, 2 effect sends and 2 insert buses. And the insert bus returns have volume control over those as well. And then you have queuing built in with the headphone jack, full-size headphone jack in the front. Full queuing with headphone jack on the front, and that can be assigned to either individual cue channels, which you can see the cue buttons there, or you can set it to the master if you just want to hear your main output, which can be also very, very handy. The filter, another unique thing about the filter is that with those A and B selectors per channel, the filter can be assigned to only a filter A or only B or filter all. And so if you assign one track to A and then you put the filter on A and engage the filter, it will only use that, right? It will only filter that individual channel. Or you can, put 3 or 4 or 5 different things or channels on A and then set the filter to A, and it will filter only those ones. And then up by the master output, there's an override switch, which is filter all. You just switch that on, and then the filter becomes your master filter. So you can use it for buildups and breakdowns, and it basically high passes, low passes your master output. So there's that's kind of the main walk around. A couple other things that are really important is All of the outputs and all of the inputs on the back are all full size quarter-inch inputs and outputs. So you don't, it's not like necessarily Eurorack. You can come from Eurorack. The gain is a gain and a trim. So if you bring in individual Eurorack channels at Eurorack levels, you can trim those down. And if you bring in something that's maybe a low level, you can gain it up. So you can get a really good mix without using the faders. And then you can use the faders as they're intended for performance, for bringing things in and controlling your mix in performance. Another thing is on the back of the mixer, there's a TRS mic input that can be switched on that has its own amp, and that goes to channel 8. So 8 can be a normal input channel or a mic input channel. So if you want to use a microphone in your performance, you can do that as well. A couple interesting things that we kind of worked through and have noticed that's a really, really good use of this is I think a lot of live performance artists are using EasyBot's template with the Octatrack. And what's really cool with this is because you have stereo buses that you can send and return from, you can put all of your drums on bus A, all of your melodics on bus B, and then send out those stereo pairs to the inputs in the Octatrack, and then it syncs up perfectly with that performance template. So if you want to use, all of those kind of glitch effects and all of that kind of stuff, you can use those in this, and then it returns directly back into the Xcelon and goes out the main mix. So you can still use master filter and stuff like that. So what's cool is that this means every individual channel, like a lot of times with that template, you're going to be putting things, through electron boxes to just sum them down to 2 inputs. With this, every channel you have individual control over: analog drive, compressor, tilt EQ, all of that stuff, effect sends and all of that. And then those A and B buses can go out into the Octatrack and come back. So you can use that as a great performance tool. You can also use it if you're performing in a group of people and you want to separate out your drums from your melodics, or if you want to send a different mix, a headphone mix to somebody, you can put that on one of those and send those out as a mix as well. So so that's kind of it. I did want to show you the rig that I played with in LA. So let's see this. Okay, so this should be working now, audio. So this is the rig that I played with in LA. So you can see the Xcelon mixer in the front. I had a number of modular voices that were coming directly out of the case into the Xcelon. So again, being able to use the trim to take in those really hot modular signals and then have those work perfectly. I also had on the right side, you can see a 1010 black box. And the black box has 3 stereo outputs that are assignable by track, but those can also be split into dual mono. So I had, for example, I had a clap just by itself going on one track into one channel of the mixer, so I could control the clap separately. And I had hi-hats coming to another channel in the mixer, so I could control them separately. And I had a vocal coming to another channel, so I could control it separately. So it's cool to be able to take a device like that has multiple outputs and being able to split those outputs across an analog mixer and then use that mixer to then perform with. So a few devices that this would work really well with. 1010 black box, obviously, because it has multiple outputs. The Electron Tonewerk has 4 regular outputs, but then you can also split the headphone out, and those are assignable as well. So that actually has 6 individual outputs. And with all the ways that you can route through different buses in the Tonewerk, and then you can assign those to outputs, that's kind of an amazing match to be able to connect that. So then you can have this you can have your digital voice with your digital effects and all of that stuff. And then you can put it through an analog mixer to use the analog drive to kind of saturate things a bit and use the analog circuits in there to kind of warm things up a bit. So it's a really cool combination depending on, whatever type of whatever type of gear you want to use. So anyway, what questions do you guys have? I'm going to check out in the chat here, see what you guys have. Don't need a ton of cheap digital stuff. I agree. It's nice. Video demo next weekend. I'm planning on doing a stream already with it live. Boredbrain sending it back to me. So I'll have it hopefully middle of this week so I can get stuff set up to do another stream next weekend and kind of walk through functionality of it live on that stream. Let's see what else. And expand it so there's a Eurorack module to send the inputs. Not sure what you mean about sending the inputs. I mean, basically, you can come directly from Eurorack modules directly into this. If you wanted to, if you had, let's say, an Xcelon mixer in your Eurorack case, that has A and B bus outputs as well. So you could basically mix everything in that, send that out to two separate outputs, and each one of those could come to a different channel in the SL. And then you could add in different devices as well on top of that. So that would be kind of the best use of that. I also, one thing to note too, in this setup that's on the screen right now, the two FX effects modules over on the left side, I was using those as my effects send and returns from the mixer as well. So it's cool because I had just a small 3U84 little skiff, so I could have a few voices, couple of effects, and then use those in conjunction with the mixer, whether it's, effect sends and returns. If you wanted to do some processing in an outboard thing like this, you could. And then you could combine it with a whole bunch of other gear. And you don't have to have a huge modular setup to be able to include a mixer and include, trying to do what this mixer does in Eurorack, it would be a nightmare. Just to have a compressor per voice in your case, and a digital or an analog drive per voice and an EQ per voice in your case would be, bigger than any of us could carry around. And so to be able to have something like this where you can do all of that in an external thing is pretty cool. So you can kind of scale your case down for traveling to just the voices that you want to use and just the effects that you want to use. And that way you can still customize your experience while keeping your mixing environment the same. So for me, performing the two things that are key for me is a sequencer that's central to all the gear and a mixer that's central to all the gear. And then the gear is interchangeable, right? You can use modular, you can use samplers, you can use outboard synths, you can use your computer, you can use whatever you want. And then you have one mixing environment that you can perform with and one sequencing environment that you can perform with. So it kind of centralizes everything through there. Good evening, Honey Smack. What's going on? Are you back in Australia or are you still in the States? Got to see Honey Smack perform in LA last week. It was pretty amazing, as always. Any pics of the back panel? I don't have one loaded up in my computer right now, but there are a couple in a couple of the forums. We did take a couple, but the back panel is all 1/4-inch inputs. I mean, that's basically all that's back there. It's 1/4-inch inputs and power. So it's stereo ins or dual mono ins for every channel, 4 send and returns, stereo pairs for the 2 effect sends and the 2 buses, and then 1 mic input jack, and then power. But again, they're all 1/4-inch inputs in the back. Lucky me. Yes, very lucky me. It's been amazing to be involved in this. So yeah, here, I'll switch back up so you can see this view of it in case you guys have any questions about the knobs and buttons and everything on there. Oxy style. Yes, Oxy as well. Clean up the cables. It was nice to have a little stand to elevate my modular so all the cables would go underneath, which is key. Love to see an SL versus model comparison, Model 1. I mean, I can give you a little bit of a rundown. So both analog mixers, The this one is 8 stereo channels. The Model One is 6, I believe. Um, this the each of them has 2 effect sends. This has a drive and compressor per channel. That the Model One doesn't have. The Model One has a multi-band EQ, where this has a tilt EQ, and that is really because Model One is designed as a DJ mixer. And when you're mixing an entire track with another entire track, you need multi-band EQ to be able to make those mixes smooth, right? So to correct individual sections. When we're performing live, you don't need multi-band EQ per channel because each channel is an individual instrument. And so, you're not really going to be EQing in the mixer at that point, other than tilt EQ, which is to kind of brighten or darken individual sounds. You're not going to really, you can do your corrective sound shaping inside the synth or the groove box or the modular or whatever you're using, and by the time it reaches this, there's not really a need for the multi-band EQ. So that was the idea when we were saying all the stuff you need for this type of performance without the stuff you don't. So there's a lot of things that are in DJ mixers that you just don't need for live performance, and they're missing some things that you do need for live performance, like having drive circuits and compressors. Like a compressor per channel means that you can have all sorts of different types of inputs coming into this, and you can really shape between the gain, drive, EQ, and compressor. You can really shape each individual sound so that it fits properly in the overall mix of your performance. And once those are shaped, then you have all the performance tools. Having faders, which for me is kind of absolutely essential for a performance mixer. Rotary mixers are fine, but for a performance standpoint, with this, if I need to adjust all 8 faders at the same time, I can with different fingers. If you want to push up 2 or 3 things together, keeping their level ratios the same, you can do that with multiple faders. You can't do that with multiple rotary knobs on a rotary mixer. So for me, a performance mixer, and I guess the part of that's coming from the DJ background, but a performance mixer for me needs to have faders. I mean, that's kind of the essential piece to it. So this is great because again, you can set up your sound shaping and your individual channels, and then you've got the faders, the filter, sidechain, all of that stuff, effect sends to be able to actually do your performance. Okay. But yeah, so that's basically this versus Model One, and it's not just Model One. It's like versus any DJ mixer. Certain ones, for example, like the Pioneer V10 does have a compressor per channel, which is great. That's why a lot of people use it. But it doesn't have a drive circuit per channel. It doesn't have. It's not analog. So, but that mixer has a bunch of built-in effects. Then the big difference is that mixer weighs about 40 pounds and it's gigantic. So you can't travel with it. It's designed to be installed in a DJ booth, and that was it. Where this is really designed to be portable. Now, size-wise, I don't know if you got a picture of it from that other rig. So from this view, you can see it compared to an Oxy One, compared to a 1010 black box, but it's basically it's 14 inches by 8 inches, so it's like similar size to an Octatrack, a little bit deeper than an Octatrack, and it also compares really similarly to the Hapax sequencer. So if you're trying to get a view of the size of the mixer, that's what it is. All right. Oh, you just emailed me a picture of the back panel. Let me see. I can. Okay. Let's see if I can get this to work. Maybe. Yeah, that might take longer than could do on here. Let me see if I can sort that out. It might take me a minute, but I will do my best to get you guys a picture of the back panel. Let's see here. What about recording? They plan extra boxes for outputs or an SD recorder like the Eurorack Xcelon if it's not built in. So any kind of recorder. So again, it's not built in because this is an all analog mixer. So that would take analog to digital conversion, would add a lot of expense to the device, and it would make it heavier and bigger. What there will be, and this was something else that we were showing at the show at Bookland Friends this weekend, is the optics module, which is a Eurorack module that Boredbrain has that converts audio and CV signals to and from ADAT. So it's 8 in, 8 out ADAT converter. So Boredbrain already has that for the Eurorack, and we were showing a box which is the optics desktop and the optics SL, and that's a standalone desktop version. So you can basically patch in and out from this mixer with the optics box next to it, and then you just have a single ADAT cable that can go to your audio interface or your push 3 or whatever. And what's great with that is that then you can have, like, let's say you were using a push 3 for your live performances or your productions. You can have digital channels in your push 3 that you can send out, mix them in an analog environment with the drive and things like that. So you can shape those sounds in an analog mixer, and then you can send them back in for final mastering or whatever you want for performance. When we were doing the demo at the Booklet event, we had a laptop that was running a Bitwig session, and each one of the stems from Bitwig was going out via ADAT, coming in from that optics box into the Xcelon SL, so that you had each individual stem on a track so people could mess around with the mixer and play with, kind of remixing the stems there. Then we were also using the effect sends to go out through that machine, connecting ADAT to Bitwig, and using the effects that were built into Bitwig as the stereo effects on the effect sends and returns. So gives you a lot of options to connect that way. So that outside box, not sure. Adam might want to post this. I know it's not out yet. I believe they're shooting for the summer as well, but don't have a date on that on the optics desktop. But that'll be kind of the companion to this if you wanted to use it as a mixer that kind of interfaces with your software. So it wasn't built into this. And again, we wanted to have this mixer be for the broadest category of electronic music performers, without a bunch of the kind of niche things that were only for certain groups, because that would mean that it would cost more for a bunch of people that wouldn't necessarily need something. And so this allows it to be expanded using other things on the outside, but this is the core mixer that kind of does what it says on the tin. It mixes, and it's a performance mixer. So all of that stuff. Let's see. How much is it? I'm assuming that is how much is it without the H. So they don't have a final price yet. Still waiting to find out, like, final cost of everything. But I know they're shooting for around the price of an Octatrack. So we'll see. Significantly less than the competitors out there, being, the Model 1 or the Zone 96 or the V10 or whatever, any sort of performance mixer. There are other standalone desktop mixers, like the Jelly Mix or the Baby Cherie or the L6 or things like that. But none of those are really kind of performance mixers, as we were talking about. Like, none of those have faders, fewer channels, and things like that. So they're designed for a different user, a very different use case. This is really specifically designed for performance and for using it as kind of a small home studio setup as well. So you don't need a separate mixer for your home studio and for your performance. This way you can do both. Q, looks like that question got answered. I was looking for a solution like this at NAMM, found none. Great to see this. We should have come over to Bookland Friends. We were showing at Bookland Friends. everybody was getting lost in the mix over at NAM. That was huge. Um, let's see. Yeah, it looks like Hapex size. If I'm not wrong, Adam can chime in here because he has a Hapex. So if I'm not wrong, I think the footprint is almost exactly the same size as a Hapex. This is angled down, so it's a little bit lower in the front than the Hapex, and it's about 2 inches in the back, so about the same as a Hapex in the back. Best thing about Boredbrain is recording post fader and ADAT expansion. Hard to believe these features are missing from all of our mixers. Yeah, it is. I mean, we've had that conversation a lot. Like, it's just funny that nobody's done this. And it's kind of like, electronic live performers are a much smaller market than DJs. So the DJ mixer people haven't really gone this way. And then the studio mixer people, it's not what they're into. And it's like, it just is this middle space where we've been kind of being neglected for years, that nobody was really making something for hardware live performance, particularly with electronic music. So yeah, it's we're super excited about it for sure. Would this work well with an electron-based setup? Yes, absolutely. Tonework, especially because it has multiple outputs, so you can have one box outputting multiple different channels into a mix environment. Whereas if you're using it on the Electron, it's like you have to go to their mixer mode, and then you can adjust volume, and then you have to go to the channel to adjust the EQ, and then you have to go to a different channel to change different things. So with this, you can have those things all coming out into a mix environment that you can then use and send out. And this includes sidechain by channel, the master filter or the assignable filter. So it gives you a whole bunch of options that augment an Electron setup. But yeah, I mean, this surrounded by some Electron boxes is kind of an ideal use case for this. Or, using it with something like an analog rhythm and a Tonework. Analog rhythm has individual outputs per channel, and the Tonework has 4 or actually 6 mono outputs or 3 stereo outputs. So each could go into different channels. Then you could take the kick from the rhythm into one channel. You could take, you could mix and match the inputs, which is really kind of very cool. Let's see what else. Keeping in mind this is made for performance, would you personally consider it studio worthy? Yeah, I mean, I think definitely that's one thing we talked about. I mean, SL does not stand for Circo Live, as some people said. It's for studio and live. And the idea being that for a small home studio, if you're doing electronic music, you are, again, big studio mixers with multi-band EQs, those are great if you're recording drums and guitars and vocals and, acoustic instruments and things where you need to shape the sound in the mixer. With this, you're recording individual electronic instruments where you have a lot of sound shaping of just that one voice in the instrument. So you don't need a bunch of corrective EQ when you get to this. So yeah, this would be great for electronic producers using hardware in the studio. And then if you were to use something like the optics, the desktop optics box to connect it to your audio interface or, your recording solution, that would be great. Or as I said, you can multi-track out using those outputs into like a 1010 Blue Box or some other multi-track recorder, whatever you wanted to use. So yeah, definitely it's great for small home studio use, particularly for electronic music. It's not made to mix bands. That's why it doesn't have all the EQs where you're going to try to EQ somebody's vocal or EQ, the tone of your acoustic instruments that you have mic'd. It's not for that. It's for electronic instruments that have a lot of sound shaping capabilities before they ever get to the mixer. So yeah. Let's see. Damn time to sell my Model 1. I mean, keep the Model 1 if you're DJing, for sure. But if you're performing, electronic hardware live performance, the Xcelon is definitely made for that, where the Model 1 is made for DJing. Roughly when can we expect pre-orders? Pre-orders, it looks like, are going to be open in a few weeks. I know they're getting it set up right now. They just have to get final pricing and then get things set up on the website. So if you go to the Boredbrain website, you can sign up for their email list. And once that's coming out, they'll blast out to that. And there'll be a bunch of info out there about that as well. But I would guess in about a month or so. I don't know for sure. Maybe Adam wants to chime in, but I know that's what they're shooting for that. And then shipping this summer. So, yep, as soon as they can be built. They're going to build as fast as they can, but they build them all by hand in Richmond, Virginia. So it's, it'll take a minute to get them all built, but they'll get out as soon as they can. I would still recommend a master compressor like a Bohm. Not necessary with this. So if we go back to my rig that I had here, if you notice, I have the Bohm in my case. I was using that as my kick drum, but you'll notice it's only the Bohm and the groove and not the performer, because I didn't need the sidechain, because I was able to sidechain everything within the mixer. So rather than having to mix everything together and send it through the Bohm, which is what you need to do in the modular world, with this, I could just send the Bohm and the groove part, the rumble part, into channel 1 in the mixer, and then the internal sidechain is triggered by the Bohm in this setup. So I didn't need the performer in this case. But when I'm using my my full modular case and I'm using my Xcelon modular mixer, it doesn't have the side chain. So then I use the Bohm performer as that. So, but this does act very similarly to that. So that would be redundant. You wouldn't need it. Let's see. Where are we at? Also, do you pipe the out of this into the Bohm or the Bohm into one of these channels? Yeah, Bohm into one channel. In this scenario, one thing that's cool too, if you have the Bohm, there's a new firmware, which I don't know if you've gotten it or not. They didn't really publicize that they put it out, but with the new firmware, the two outputs on the Bohm can output a mono kick and mono rumble separately. On those two outputs, which works great with the Xcelon SL, because you can put those in and you can put it in crossfade mode, and that allows you to mix between your kick and your rumble, which is pretty cool. I mean, you've also got the fader on the Bohm, but it's just another way to do that as well, which is pretty cool. Let's see, feature-wise, such a killer. Too bad there's nothing like HDMI DB25. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing, is to try to take a fully analog mixer, convert everything that this is doing into digital so that you could have an HDMI cable would, double the price and the size and the weight of the thing. And so it really kind of is not what this was designed for. It was really designed to be an analog mixer, desktop mixer. Beginning of March for pre-orders. Still some logistics and pricing. Oh, there you go. You got it. Yeah. So about a month. Cool. Auto boom analog heat type compressor. Let me see. Would you still recommend? Oh, Bohm, not like Ohm Force Bohm, but the auto boom. Again, unnecessary. Because, I mean, this gets into a controversial topic, but I am not a fan. I am not a fan of putting a compressor on your main output for live performance, because setting a compressor on your master when you're producing, you only have to have compressor settings that work for 5 minutes with limited range of sounds. But over the course of, I played a show last night where I played for 4 hours. Over the course of a 4-hour live set, bringing in and out multiple different instruments, adjusting filter resonances and bringing in effects and doing all that kind of stuff, your compressor settings would be changing totally over, every minute, every second over the course of 4 hours. So there's no way to really set a compressor on your main and have it really do anything. And so then you would be like, oh, well, I'm just going to do it lightly. Well, then there's no point, because most of the time it wouldn't even touch it. So having a good quality mix output, which by having a compressor per channel can give you a really good quality output mix. Then you just need to gain up that output mix. So running that into, maybe using something like something that has a limiter and a saturator. So like in my modular case, I use the polydactyl Versio from Noise Engineering. So if you had a little skiff and you had a polydactyl, you could run your master through that, and you've got multi-band limiting and a master saturator. And then that's your amazing output. So I would recommend that more than an end of chain output box. Again, because the compressor is not the thing that you necessarily need. The analog heat plus effects does have a bass mono function, which is great to have on your output. So you can adjust the crossover and you can mono everything below, say, I don't know, 200 hertz or whatever. And then it also has a really good saturation circuit. So to be able to saturate and mono your bass is a cool thing to be able to do on your output. So in that case, it would add something that this doesn't do, but the compressor is, this doesn't have a main output compressor for a reason. It has a side chain for a reason. So yeah, anyway, truly exciting product. I agree. I'm super excited for it. With the SL, would you still keep the modular Xcelon? Yeah, I mean, they're really different use cases. For me, my big modular setup is really for having everything all in one. So I can just roll up, open it, plug it in, connect audio, and I'm good to go. This is really for using a different type of setup where you have different types of different devices going into it. So like the thing that I'm showing on screen right here, this was a combination of a small modular skiff with a sampler, but you could then add on to this, an electron box running, then you could run all the master stuff out through an Octatrack for performance mixing. So being able to incorporate a bit of modular with a bit of other hardware boxes, with this would be ideal. And then also, if you wanted to just have a bunch of hardware boxes, it's also pretty much the ideal setup for that. So, let's see. Thank you. I didn't know about the Bohm firmware. Oh yeah, those separate outs are pretty cool. It's a very good option. So if you download the firmware and then you go into the setup mode, you can set up to have those on two different outputs, which is pretty cool. So back in Australia, here we go. Size of the Xcelon is perfect. I agree. I mean, that was our big thing. We started with the idea that this had to be portable. And so what can you get into that portable thing instead of saying, there's some, a much bigger device that could be made with all of the different ideas that were had in this whole process. But it would then no longer be a portable performance tool. And so the idea was for this to really fit that niche, because you've got huge mixers. You've got like the Big Six, and you've got, the Model 1, and you've got the V10, and you've got the Zone 96. They're massive mixers. And so they're just not portable. And that's what's great with this one, is that you can take it with you. And I think there's a lot of people that are using, say, Zone 96 for their live shows, and they're just asking for them to be in place when they arrive. And that's great and all. But the reality is, when you're traveling to perform, you never really know the quality of the gear if you're using borrowed gear. And so that promoter, if they decide to cheap out and they get you a 96 that has, staticky, wobbly knobs or bad inputs, or one channel strip is blown or whatever, they'll get whatever they can get their hands on. Where with this, you can take it with you and you know exactly what you've got as far as your performance mixer. So it's definitely nice to have your own gear for sure. Yeah, and you said compact but not cramped. That's for sure. Like that was my big thing, was I wanted to make sure, because there's so much functionality. There was a lot of concern. Adam put a lot of time into this to make sure that you can, you're not bumping into things when you're using things. The things that you're using more often are larger knobs. The things that you use less often are smaller knobs. The placement of everything is really logical. and the faders feel great, and the switches are really good, and they're recessed enough so that you don't accidentally hit a switch when you're doing something, which is great. Like you could have those little toggle switches that stick up, but then when you're turning something, you're going to bump the toggle switch because it is a pretty small environment. And those switches, you're not going to be using them very often, but they're there so that you can still use them during performance. But it's not like on every mix you're switching a whole bunch of the switches. You're going to kind of set up the mixer the way you want to use it, and then you're using the knobs for the main use case. So yeah. Let's see. I've been excited for the jelly mixer, but when the Xcelon dropped, I was really excited for the choice. Yeah, it's again, jelly mix is cool, but it's for a very, very different use case. Jelly mix is when you want to functionally mix together 6 channels and have a filter and I can't remember if there's one or I think 2 effects ends. And that's pretty much it. That's where it ends. And because it's rotary, you can only do 2 things at once because you only have 2 hands. So you can only adjust, you can only bring in 2 things or bring out 2 things or adjust 2 things at one time. And so for me, it's not really a performance mixer. It's a mixer, which is cool that, they make a really small, inexpensive analog mixer that does that. This adds a whole bunch of functionality, with the stereo high pass, low pass filter, separate resonance control, analog drive per channel, compressor per channel, tilt EQ per channel. All of that stuff is just like a whole next level. And then when you add in the faders, like that's the key. Like a performance mixer really needs to have faders because there's times when you need to move multiple things in a performance. And if not, you might as well just not use a mixer and just adjust each individual box as you are doing things, which you can do for sure. It's just not very functional, right? It's possible, but not super functional. It does look fire. It is fire. I agree. Do you know the price? Shooting for about the price of an Octatrack, but it's not finalized yet. So once all of the final purchasing and the cost of assembly and all of that stuff gets finalized, Boredbrain will get that out to you. Let's see. Just got here. Looks dope. Is this 8-channel stereo? It's 8-channel stereo or 16 dual mono inputs. So every channel has the option to be switched into a crossfade mode where the pan becomes a crossfade between your 2 mono signals. Which is the same as it is on the Xcelon modular mixer. So I was using that on my show last night, where I had 2 different. I had a hi-hat and a kind of a hi-hat-ish percussion on the same track, and I could mix between them, and it didn't matter that they shared the same volume fader and the same effect sends. And so that's what this has as well. So it's cool. So you can have like 2 kicks on one channel and you can mix between them, kind of morph between them. You could have different hi-hats, you could have different, types of percussion, all of that. And you can mix those together in those mono signals, which is pretty cool. Or you've got 8 stereo channels, which is pretty cool as well. Couldn't tell from the photo of the rear panel. Calculating, does this have per channel output jacks or does it only output a stereo mix out? So the output, there's different ways to do output. Your master bus is a stereo output. Then you have assignable buses by channel. So if we go back to the other look, you can see just above the mute, there's a switch that says A, main, or B. Those are output buses. So you've got your main output bus. You have a stereo A output, which is an insert with a return, a B stereo output, which is an insert with a return. And then those would come back together for the main output. So you have all those different types of outputs. And then on the top of each channel, there's that 3.5 millimeter TRS, and that is a stereo pre-fader output per channel. So if you want a multi-track record. So lots of different output options for sure. Let's see it in action. You will next weekend. I don't have it yet. It's coming back to me on, I think it'll be here about Wednesday. So I'll put things together. Next weekend stream will be using it and showing it in use. This was just to kind of go over. There's so many questions out there in all the forums and so much incorrect information that I wanted to do this so I could clear up a lot of that. So I wasn't answering the same thing in all the different forums. Let's see. Great points. Also, extremely glad you're doing this info review of this. Yeah, I'm happy to. I'm super excited about this, so couldn't be happier. Does it multi-track record? It does if you have a multi-track recorder. So you've got all of those pre-fader outputs that are at the top of each channel. I connect those to a 1010 blue box, which has all those different inputs. And then you can just set that up to record, hit record, play your live set, and then you've got stems of every individual track that you played in your live performance. So yes. Let's see. Is it a master filter? Can you assign it per channel like the Zone? Yes, you can assign it per channel. So that A, B, and main assignment. If you're not using output buses, you can assign that. Or if you're just using A, you can assign individual tracks to B and then set the filter to only filter the B tracks. So you can set up whichever tracks you want. So you can have multiples and then use that filter. Or there is a filter all switch which overrides all of those switches and puts it onto the master bus. So it becomes a master DJ style filter. So unlike the Zone, however, this is a stereo high pass, low pass DJ style filter. So you don't have to, high pass switch, low pass switch, high pass switch. It's all in one without having to switch back and forth between high pass, low pass. And there's separate resonance control for the high pass and the low pass sides. So it allows you to dial it in exactly the way you like it. Pre-channel mini jacks in the front. There are not per channel quarter-inch outputs on the back. There's no way that would have fit. The back is completely full, and it's because of all the quarter-inch inputs. The only outputs, I should say, on the back are left and right stereo main, left and right bus A with left and right bus A return, left and right bus B with left and right bus B return. And then there's also stereo effects, two stereo effect sends and returns on the back as well. So there are outputs that are quarter-inch, but it's not per channel. You would have to bus things and then output those buses if you wanted to do it quarter-inch. But to go, 3.5 to quarter is just a cable. So it doesn't really change things up at all. Hype, yes. It does not multi-track record like the Tascam Model 16 because it is not a digital mixer. It is an analog mixer. So it doesn't have anything digital built into it. So there's no recorder, there's no HDMI, there's no ADAT, there's no USB-C, there's nothing because it's analog. It's not a digital mixer. Okay. Expensive, but sounds like the perfect mixer. I agree. It sounds like the perfect mixer. Expensive, I think, is relative because when you compare it to, its closest competitors, which would be Zone 96, Play Differently Model 1, Pioneer V10, and the SSL Big 6, it's coming in at around half the price of those. So, and it has more features in many cases than those do. So I think price wise, I think it's right where it needs to be. Can't wait to see it. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. The AB buses are different than the two effects loops. Are they the same? Yeah. So you see the two gray knobs per channel. Those are the stereo effect sends. So the sends are, would send to one output bus that's going to an effect or a chain of effects. And then each channel sends to that same one. Where the other ones, the bus outputs are inserts. So you don't have like an amount that you send. It's just you assign it to a bus. So for example, if you assigned all your drums to bus A, those could go through a drum processing chain of different pedals or a computer or whatever, a multi-pedal like an H90, and then they could come back in and it would only process that. And there's not an amount that you're sending. You're sending the entire bus through that, and then you have a return volume on that. But the bus itself does not have a send amount. It's just it's a bus send. Let's see. It is exciting. You're welcome. I'm spending time because I'm super excited about this thing. So yeah. If the direct outs are only pre-fader, that's a bummer, but it makes sense since it's analog. Yeah, I mean, it's the idea is that you would normally, if you know, obviously there's times when you would want post fader, but if you're using them to multi-track, you would normally want them pre-fader anyway, because you want the output signal of that channel. And so anything that you would want to change as far as, levels or adding effects or, panning or any of that stuff, you would do in the box once you multi-tracked it. Otherwise you just record the main out and then you've got your whole performance. So for sure. The TRS outs won't do post fader. They do not. Aux track pack sounds right. I think so too. It's pretty good. Oh, what's Adam say? We had to choose pre or post for the direct outputs. Yeah. Yeah, they're post gain, EQ, and balance, but pre fader. Yeah. So you get the character of the mix, but you don't get the volume. And the handy thing with that too is that it can be, you can patch it into the sidechain in, and you can use any channel to be your trigger for the sidechain, which is pretty sweet. Probably explained this already, but how do you select or route the sidechain input? So the sidechain, so it depends. Input or what channels are sidechain. So the input, being the trigger of the sidechain, is normal to channel one. So whatever's plugged into channel one will be what is triggering the envelope generator that is the sidechain. If you choose to, there's a separate external sidechain input, which can either come from like an outside source, like a drum machine or whatever. If you want to send your kick into that and you don't have your kick going through the mixer, that overrides that normal on channel one, and channel one just becomes a normal track that can be sidechained. How do you select which things are sidechained by that trigger? There is an individual selector. If you notice right above where it says volume on each slider, on each fader, it says SC, what does it say? SC on. Sorry, I was looking at it really small on my screen. So that's sidechain on for that channel. So you can sidechain individual channels. So as an example, if you just want to duck your bass instrument from your kick drum, you would just select that one channel, make the sidechain very subtle, and set the frequency of the selector for the sidechain to the lowest frequencies. So that way you're going to take the lowest frequencies from the kick. When they happen, they would duck your bass. So that'll be more of a mix tool. Whereas if you wanted it to be more of kind of a dramatic pumping for, techno and other types of dance music, you could select all of the channels, set it to trigger from the transient of the kick, and turn the sidechain amount up. That big sidechain knob that's right above the filter is the amount of ducking. So if you turn that all the way to the right, it ducks it 100%. It ducks the volume of it 100%. And then it's any amount down from that. So anyway, it's good that Adam's here answering all the questions. This is glorious, Todd. Is the sidechain visualized? Yeah, that's another thing that's really cool. If you notice in the picture, every one of the volume faders has a little white band across it. That's a backlight that's inside there, and those show the volume or the amount of output of that fader. So as you move it up, they get brighter. Anything that's being sidechained, those things dim by the amount that it's being sidechained. So when you look at the mixer, you can see if you missed selecting a channel, or if you have a channel selected that you don't want to sidechain, you can see it ducking with the lights. So you don't have to hear it in the mix, because sometimes you can't hear all the way through your mix. So you can see it, and then you can go in and make those adjustments. So really, really nice touch that the sidechain is visualized in those the lights on the faders. Just pretty sweet. Another way to get the best of both worlds is to have MIDI outs so you can capture fader movements during a performance to recreate the equivalent of post fader outs. Yes, but to have MIDI out, it would have to be digital. And this is an analog mixer. So there's not a way to do analog MIDI out. Pre-fader's a deal breaker, got to do the work twice. Cool. Then there's other mixers that are out there for sure. But that's not what this was designed to do. This is designed to do post fader. Let's see, way more in depth than I expected. It is in depth. It is a pretty sweet thing. How good is the headroom noise? Does it color the sound at all? Well, one of the things that's really cool with this is what Adam was able to do when he designed this was take super high end pro quality components miniaturized in order to do this. And so you're getting similar output qualities to what you're going to see in any of these high end mixers that we're talking about. So, when he did his very first kind of initial signal to noise ratio output, it's over 85 decibels. And that's just like raw measurement. It's not like a lot of the companies he was explaining to me will do this where they mute everything. It's only going out of one channel in a really highly controlled environment, so you can get that signal to noise ratio to register even higher. We haven't measured this that way yet. I assume it will be at some time, but for right now, just kind of normal outputting on the main, the signal to noise ratio is greater than 85 decibels, which is into pro level quality. So these kind of studio mixers that we're talking about, the DJ mixers that we're talking about, are all in that same kind of category. So yeah, similar signal to noise ratio and dynamic range as those as well. And does it color the sound? I mean, it doesn't color the sound as far as adding in distortion, but it is an analog mixer. But it's a really, really, really clean output analog mixer. So it's not going to give you a bunch of weird extra added harmonics to it. So anyway, let's see. Pre-fader outputs is a deal breaker for my use case, but this will work great for a lot of people, I suspect. Yeah, I mean, there's options. If you wanted to do post fader and you're going into a computer, then you would just use something like the easiest way to do post fader would be to bus to certain things, and then you could have that be post fader. But yeah. Let's see. Great feature of the LEDs. I agree. I don't know. I don't know why nobody else does that, but it's pretty cool. The Xcelon modular mixer does that as well, but the modular one does not have the sidechain, so you can't see ducking, obviously, because there's no sidechain in it. But it does represent the output level, which is pretty cool. So as you bring the fader up, the light gets brighter, which is definitely very cool. You're welcome. Happy to answer all the questions. Master out is 1/4 inch stereo. So left and right stereo 1/4 inch outputs. Liam, what's going on? Good to have you here. The new GOAT mixer. Yes, I agree. I've been seeing this coming down the road for a little while as we've been working on it together, and it's been super exciting to kind of see everything come together, because again, this isn't designed by a committee of people in a boardroom figuring out what's the cheapest way you can eliminate features to make something fit into a certain cost for a certain consumer. This is, what do electronic hardware live performers need in a mixer? And that was kind of where it started from, right? So yeah, it started with the end in mind, right? And it's something, I posted this the other day. It's been a real pleasure collaborating with Boredbrain on this, because it's so nice to work with people who care so deeply about the quality of what they're making and the components that they're using in it, and they care about who's going to use it at the end. Where a lot of these companies, they'll cut corners and figure out a way to make something super cheap, and then they try to convince you that that's what you really need. And this started from a totally different place. This started from the place of, what do these people actually need, and what is the best possible way we could make that? And that's where this came from. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Let's see. Yes, master outputs are balanced too. Just joined from the UK. Hello. Did see this the other day and was intrigued. Well, welcome. It's an intriguing piece of kit for sure. Currently using the Noise Engineering Zero Mixa, which isn't perfect, but the closest to my ideal I've found. The main downside is no direct outs. Yeah, I mean, it's really unusual to find mixers that have direct outs. Because the idea is to mix, right? You're bringing in a bunch of ins to mix them together to N out. If you want to have direct outs, that's basically just a sound card, just an audio interface. So you would have direct outs going into your computer, and then you would mix it in there. But yeah, mixers with direct outs. I can't even think of mixers that have direct outs. Maybe there is. I'm sure I'm missing something in general, but post fader direct outs, certainly in an analog mixer. I can't think of any that I've seen, but I could be wrong as well. Sorry if this has already been asked, but what would the price point for this? Not 100% decided yet. It's because they're still getting some final numbers, but shooting for about the price of an Octatrack. So I think those are like $17.99. So that's the goal. I don't know if it'll be slightly more, slightly less, but it's not going to be, the Pioneer V10 is kind of the gold standard for hardware mixers right now for live performance. And that's almost 4,000 US. It's like 3,900 US. So this will be less than half that, which is nice. And then you've got like the Play Differently Model 1, which is like 2,900 or something like that. So, I understand the point of a mixer with direct outs. I just don't, as far as having, you can do that, but the easiest way to do that would be to mix with a MIDI controller and just go directly into your computer and mix with that. So, yeah. But yeah, not for every use case. But again, this is designed to be a mixer. It's designed to mix signals and put them into an output or different types of outputs. So, hey, Herbie, what's going on? Good to see you. Yeah, Herbie got to see this at Buchla and Friends. It was fun to show it to him a little bit. That was very, very fun. But yeah, going to the outputs idea, being able to, pre-fader or post fader and or post fader would be great. But the idea is that the vast majority of people aren't going to be using that functionality. This is really designed as a performance mixer. And so to be able to record pre-fader, so then you've got everything that you can go into your DAW and, adjust any way you want to is kind of the idea. So what's up, Jeffy? Moonbase Alpha jumping in. Can't wait to pick up one. What do you mean one? You said the other day you wanted two. What do you mean one? One mixer. Jeffy is infamous for getting two of everything. So anyway, so what other questions you have? Any other questions about the mixer for me on how I would use it or how I use it or how I have used it? Or for Adam, who is the designer, that's who's quote or commenting on the Boredbrain thing. He's the one who came up with this whole thing himself. So he's the man as far as how things work. You can get as technical and nerdy as you want to with him. My knowledge of how things work goes to a certain level, and then I defer to the smart people. You can't remove the fader movements from a post-fader recording, but you can always add them in a remix. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and that's, as he said, we had to choose one, and pre-fader is the most usable, particularly for this use case. So, will this be on show at this year's Super Booth? We hope so. As of right now, all of the booth spaces at Super Booth are taken up, and they have not responded as to whether or not we will be able to have one or not. So if you would like to see it at Super Booth, reach out to them and say, we absolutely want to see this Boredbrain mixer at Super Booth. And I'm sure that we could start a petition to get it, to get a prime location for the Xcelon SL. But yeah. But yes, hopefully we will be at Superbooth this year. I will be at Superbooth this year for sure. Whether or not the mixer is being shown at a table, it will be it will be there. It will be there with me, but I don't know if it will be shown on a table or not. But we'll see. All right. What other questions? Anything else about this mixer or this setup, which I used it with? Yeah, here's the mixer without my face, so you can see the whole thing to give you a better picture of what it does. There's also some really good pictures on Boredbrain's social media on Instagram. James, what's going on? How would you use the larger Eurorack case with the SL? As I mentioned before, the large Eurorack case I would use with the regular Xcelon in the case. If I wanted to scale that back and scale that down to use less Eurorack, that would eliminate, like basically I have an entire row in my case that is just mixer and filter, and this has that. So that would eliminate a 3U84 row. Then with a lot of the processing power that this thing has, effect sends, the outputs, I wouldn't need the IO module. So I could basically eliminate down to about a 6U84, something like that, and then use this mixer if I wanted to. But the thing I like about my Eurorack Xcelon is that whole case, I could just roll up, open up the case, switch it on, and ready to go. With this is really designed for if you want to have a little modular, a couple different boxes, a couple different things, you can incorporate all those together into one environment. So this is, the modular people in general will have a modular mixer, but this is for more the kind of hardware live performance people who want to use a little bit of modular, because it does take modular levels. So yeah, it's good for a slightly different audience. Another interesting thing is that the mic input can be used on channel 8 in dual mono crossfade mode. Yes, so that mic channel that's on, or the mic input that goes to channel 8, it's a mono input. And so in that crossfader, you could still have something else with the mic on channel 8 and then use the pan to crossfade between the two as you wanted to. So, super stoked and looking very thoughtfully designed. It is. Adam put a lot of thought into this, a lot of brain power. It is really versatile. That I think is the biggest key to this thing is that, as I said at the beginning of this stream, with a sequencer like an Oxy or a Hapax or something that's your main sequencer for a lot of different devices to send signals out to, then to have a main mixer like this where all those signals come back through, that gives you your most important workflow, right? Your output and input workflow. And then all of the devices that you're connecting to can be totally interchangeable depending on what you want to play at a certain event. So you can use some modular, you can use desktop synths, you can use keyboards, you can use drum machines, whatever you want to use, mix and match those things, but you still keep your central workflow, your performance workflow the same. And all of the individual voices and devices are interchangeable, which is one of the things I love about it. Is there a center detent on the filter knob? There is. That was so funny. I didn't expect when people were using this at the show, the Buchla and Friends show this last weekend, the amount of people that commented how cool it was that there was a center detent on it surprised me. Like people would grab the mixer and the first thing they would say is like, ooh, there's a detent there. Which, I mean, obviously, as you're performing, it's nice to know that you're in the center, so you're not, accidentally filtering a tiny bit either way. But yeah, it was just funny to me that so many people commented on it. But there is a center detent on the filter, for sure. What else? Any other questions? Sorry for the sound issues at the beginning, trying to figure out how to stream with OBS, which I don't normally use, but I wanted to be able to get all these pictures in that I had so that you guys could take a look at things. But yeah, I guess kind of the overview is that it will be shipping this summer. Pre-sales are going to be live in about a month or so. So you can get ready, start clearing out some gear, making space on your desk for it. And yeah, you can do the pre-sales coming up. But yeah, if you have a diverse setup, or if you like to change up your setup from show to show, this is great. That's, with one of the best things about modular is that you can change up your rig all the time. You can bring voices in and out, and then you kind of keep your central bits the same, your mixer, your sequencers, and stuff like that. This allows that for non-modular people or semi-modular or people that have, little bits of modular. You can still keep that same ability to mix and match things, but while keeping your mixer the same. So, will it be at Found Sound in Australia? I'm assuming that would be a question for Adam, but I think that the distributor that Boredbrain uses, I'm pretty sure they distribute to Australia, but I'm not sure exactly what shops. Any shop that has Boredbrain stuff in it already will for sure get the Xcelon SL at some point. So yeah, so when those get shipped. So let's see what else. Lack of center D10 is the only thing I don't like about the Bastille E-Carry. Yeah, it's a great filter, by the way. I was talking with some of the guys I played with last night. We're using, one guy had 3 of those in his case. But yeah, that's a great filter. Very, very cool. Yeah, the filter on this is one of the one of the coolest or most interesting designs. There's a lot of really cool and really complex design stuff that Adam put into this. But correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, but I think he said that it has 8 4-pole analog filters in it that are all interacting to get left and right stereo, high pass, low pass. So you have stereo, high pass, stereo, low pass filters with separate resonance control. So, and they all have to be kind of coordinated in order to act like one filter, but it's actually 8 filters that are all together, 8 analog filters in there, which, I assume, I don't know if this is true or not, but I assume that this is why the Zone 96 and the Zone 92, they have that switching filter, because it's such a hassle to create something that acts properly as a DJ filter, or high pass, low pass. So those can be either high pass or low pass. And with this, you don't have to think anything about that switching back and forth like you do on the Allen and Heaths. So it's pretty cool to have that all in one, but that took a lot more design than most human beings are capable of. So give Adam all the credit for that one, because he came up with something pretty cool with that. What else? Did I miss anything? Adam, if you want to chime in, see if there was anything that was missed here, or anyone else, if there's any other questions that kind of went unanswered, please pop those into the chat. Happy to answer anything that's out there. Any questions? Yeah. So a couple things that were really a little bit surprising, shocking with this thing is how light it is. We don't have the final weight yet because they're still working on materials for the case, but surprisingly light. Like, it's not a tank zombie killer thing that you have with most DJ mixers. So let's see. Yeah, the filter's crazy complex. Took a lot. Its size is the real reason there isn't one on each channel. Yeah, imagine having to put 8 filters on every channel. That would be a little crazy. You gonna make a module with the filter? I don't know, Adam. You gonna make a module with that filter? That would be pretty sweet. Yeah, when they have time. That's been the never-ending conversation with the Boredbrain guys. Is there is no shortage of absolutely amazing ideas that come from that group of people. They're like, well, we could make this, and we can make one of these, and we can make one of these. and they've just like there's just not time to do all the stuff. But so everything ends up getting prioritized. But yeah, they make some amazing stuff, and a lot of amazing stuff goes unmade. EasyBot, what's up, Matthew? Good to see you in the chat. Did you do a live demo at the beginning? I did not do a live demo because I don't have the mixer with me right now. It's arriving back to me on Wednesday. So I will have it for next weekend stream. So we can go through this kind of hands on and I can show you things a little bit closer. But yes, that will be the live demo. This is the chat version because, like I said before, there's so much bad information out there, and people chiming in on these different in these different forums with incorrect answers to stuff. So it was just like, no, let's like just want to get some good information out there. So yes, you will see it being used next weekend or a week from today. Sounded great and felt well built, surprisingly lightweight. Yes, the output quality of this is stellar. It sounds so good. Yeah, I was blown away when I heard it. And I will say, that I will take little or no credit for this. When I played the show on Thursday in LA last week with this, it was a show with a whole bunch of other artists. So many people came up to me afterwards and commented about how good the sound quality was of my set. And I have to say, I was using the same gear as everybody else except this mixer. So I think the quality, the output quality of the mixer had a lot to do with the output quality of the sound of my set. So not saying the mixer will magically make you sound really good, but it is a really good sounding mixer. So if you sound okay at the start, it will make you sound good. Right. Let's see. So amped for this. We only talk about a hardware performance picture every stream. I know it was so funny. I mean, like I would give all that feedback always back to Adam. I was like, so many people are asking about this. Like, I can't wait to tell people about this because, and so, too, a lot of the feedback from these streams got filtered through me into these conversations as we were collaborating on this mixer. And so it wasn't just me saying, I want this in a mixer. It was me saying, I mean, there was some of that. There was a lot of, I want this, but then there was also a lot of, hey, this is what a lot of people ask for. This is what a lot of people are saying that they would use if it was on a mixer. And so a lot of that, all of your input made it into this at one point, which was pretty cool. But yes, I was always giggling inside when people were like, we need a mixer. I was like, I know. That's why Boredbrain's making one. So yeah, this is the one. 24 dB filters. I don't know. That's an Adam question. Finger licking good. It is. It is amazing. Yeah, it's the first time I saw it in person, it was just like, whoa, that is a good looking piece of tech. It is very, very, very well laid out and designed. It's a sexy looking machine for sure. But yeah, Adam might want to chime in on the filters, 24 dB filters or switchable to 12 dB. Thanks. Your fries are burning? You mean your eyes are burning? And you can't take your eyes off it. I know. It's like that. What was that movie where if you looked at the thing, it made you blind? But yeah, it's pretty good. And I can tell you, it plays as good as it looks. Like actually playing it in a live show, just having things like the visual feedback of the lights in the faders, having the orange like ambery LEDs look really great, and they're not like bright blinding in your eyes when you're performing. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Is the EQ bandpass band reject? It is. So the main mode of the EQ is a tilt EQ. So it's basically boosting highs while reducing lows, or boosting lows while reducing highs. So it's EQing on a tilt. And then the mid is an adjustable bandpass that can boost or duck. So you can, if you put it into mid mode and you add You can boost your mids to get, to boost a vocal or boost whatever's in the mid. Or if you go to the other side, you can scoop the mids. And so, yeah, uh, it looks like it plays as well as it looks. It does. And that was the thing. There's a lot of thought that goes into the spacing of knobs, because it's going to be used in the dark, by people that are moving quickly, and so it can't be just like these tiny little knobs that you're kind of bumping into each other all the time. And like the TX6, the Teenage Engineering TX6, is an incredibly powerful little mixer. But if it was 3 or 4 times the size, it would be way more usable. But those knobs are too tiny to be able to actually use in a performance. So you can mix things together with it, but you can't get in there and like do that. It's just not functional. Um, it's got a sequencer in it. No, there is no sequencer in it. Well, there you go. There are 12 dB per octave, double stacked voltage control filters total to make a 24 dB per octave high pass and low pass, both stereo. So there you go. That's the technical answer. I can tell you, as a user, it feels great and it sounds amazing. And Adam will tell you this is how that happens. I have no idea how that happens. That's how that happens. Modulation matrix. There is no modulation matrix. It is an analog mixer that doesn't have CV input, because they already have a mixer with CV input, and that is the Xcelon Eurorack version. So if you're going to be doing a bunch of modulation with stuff, you're going to go for the Eurorack version. This is designed for hardware live performers who, like me, want to be the modulation, right? So you are the modulation, moving things and changing things and modulating it. So that is it. What else? Anything else from any of the late arrivals? Yes, no? Happy to answer any other questions or defer to Adam from any of those. But as I said, next weekend, I should have the mixer here in my studio, and we'll be able to do a live stream showing it off a little bit about how it works. Let's see, Liam, sorry if this has already been asked. I see sidechain knob as well. Can you explain that? Yes. So there is an individual compressor per channel, which is a sound shaping compressor. So you have a punch mode that allows through transient, adjust the decay a little bit, so it can give you more like punchy kicks, for example. Or you can put it in normal mode where the attack is very short, so that it is more for catching transients and doing that kind of stuff. So that's the individual compressor per channel. Those are all independent of one another. The sidechain is totally separate from all of those. And that is, you assign it per channel, you switch it on for whatever channels you want to be sidechained. The trigger from it is normal to track number one. But then there's an external sidechain input on the top, so you can override that as well. So you can put that in, and that's what triggers an envelope generator in the sidechain. And that it will trigger that envelope, and then you've got control over how that envelope reacts. So what the threshold is, what the frequency is that triggers it, and then the decay, which is kind of like your release on your compressor. And then the sidechain knob that's there acts kind of like the sidechain knob on the Ohmforce Bohm kick drum, where it's the amount of sidechain. So if you turn it all the way to the right, the duck of the sidechain will duck 100% of the audio signal. And it's relative to the position of the fader. So it doesn't duck the whole signal. So like if the fader was only up 10% and you ducked 10%, it would duck it to silence. It's not that. It's 100% of the position of the fader is all the way to the right. So it's a pretty complicated way to do it, but it makes it much, much more accurate. So that's how the sidechain works. So if you wanted to do it subtly, bring it all the way to the left, just add a little bit of sidechain, just engage the tracks that you want to be ducked subtly out of the way of that trigger. Or if you want it to really pump, you can turn it all the way to the right and have it duck down to up to 100% of the signal. So that is the sidechain knob. But the things above the sidechain, adjust how that main knob reacts. So anyway, what else do we have here? I'm back to miss the whole thing. Well, you can always rewatch it. Be the change you want to see in your sequences or your mix. Yes. Would this be good for tracking in the studio as well? It is. We've had that conversation a little bit in here. The individual outputs per channel are pre-fader. They're post EQ and post gain, but they're pre-fader. So kind of a traditional multi-track your performance into your DAW kind of thing, you know, through your audio interface. So you've got those pre-fader outputs. So you do get each individual track output, but you're not actually multi-tracking your performance. You're multi-tracking the signals, the outputs. Is this not released yet? It is not released yet. It will be shipping this summer. Pre-sales will be open in about a month. The version that you're seeing here and the version that I played with in LA last weekend are fully working prototypes. Can you run an envelope into the sidechain input? No, it's audio, I believe. Check with Adam about that, but I think it's only audio. It's not CV. So yeah, I believe it's just an audio signal going into that. Excellent concept. I agree. Adam's got some pretty smart ideas. He's a smart dude. Using a Model 1 as a summing mixer, and this would replace it. Yeah, I mean, the Model 1 is a phenomenal DJ mixer. Like really, really, really good DJ mixer. But again, it's not made for electronic live performance. You know, that has that really great EQ section, which is amazing if you're EQing a fully produced track with full frequency spectrum and everything, and you want to mix that with another fully produced track with a full frequency spectrum. Being able to adjust individual frequency bands is amazing, and you need that when you're adjusting an entire mix. With this, it's geared towards live performers who every single channel will have an individual instrument or an individual voice or one element. And so you don't need, you shouldn't be corrective EQing in your live performance by that time. That should be done in your device before it gets to the mixer. The mixer has a tilt EQ so that if you want to brighten up a sound or darken a sound to help it fit into the mix a little. So let's say you've got, for example, like open hi-hats, like particularly 909 hats, are infamous for having full frequencies. So there's frequencies all the way down into like the low lows from those hats. So if you want to take those out, you would use the tilt EQ just to lower the lows and push the highs a little bit. And so you brighten that up and take those lows out of there. So it's really good for, getting the tone shaped the way you want of an individual instrument, which is what this is designed to have coming in per channel. So that way you can take care of all of that stuff in the individual instrument. And then once it gets here, you're just doing those kind of final details for your performance mix. Oh, no, man. Thing sounds so good and it feels nice to use. Yeah, it certainly does. How you doing, Chris? Good to see you. External sidechain input couldn't be DC coupled, unfortunately, because of the bandpass EQ at the start of the sidechain detector circuit. There you go. This is the way our conversations went through this whole process. I was like, Adam, is this possible? And he's like, no, that's not possible. Well, it might be. Let me think about that. And then the next iteration would have that involved, which was always super funny to me because all the brain power on that side, I have no idea how all that stuff works. So a lot of times it was like, you probably can't do this, but if it could this be used to merge a hybrid setup that uses your rack stuff? Yes, that's exactly how I played it in LA. This was my setup on the in the hotel. You can see the little lamp of the hotel right there before I went to play the show. So this was a setup that had modular voices. I think I had 5, but 2 of them. So I had 4 4 channels coming from the modular. So I had kick going into 1. I had the Archer's Rig hi-hat and the clutch hi-hat going into 2, each on a mono channel in that kind of crossfade mode. Being able to crossfade using the pan between the 2 mono inputs. Then I had the BIA and the pizza each on their own channel. So that was the 4 on the left. And then the 4 channels on the right were different channels coming out of the 1010 black box. So I had individual channels assigned to individual outputs from the black box, so I could send them each to their own channel in the mixer, so I could perform them and use the analog drive and the compressor and the EQ and the effect sends and stuff per instrument coming out of the black box. So I didn't need a MIDI controller, and I was able to use the analog devices in that. So yeah, this is very much the intended setup: is a little modular, a sampler, a synth, a groove box, whatever, and having those all come into one kind of one mix environment. So yes. What else? Looks cool and very compact. It is. Yep. As we said before, it's about the size of a Hapax. It's the width of an Octatrack, and it's about an inch deeper front to back than the Octatrack is. No built-in audio interface because it is a 100% analog device. So to have an audio interface, it would have to have analog to digital converters and a lot of computerized electronics, which would make it way bigger, way more expensive, and heavier. So yes, this is designed to be an analog mixer. That's the key. Yes. So not a built-in audio interface, but it does have pre-fader outputs that can be connected to your audio interface. So if you've got that sitting next to it, or to a multi-track recorder like what I do, into the blue box. Did you use the effect sends? I did. Actually, I'll go back to that rig again. If you look on the far left, there's 2 FX aids on the left of the Bohm kick drum. Each one of those was an effect send, and then that returned back into the mixer as well. So yes. So my modular had 5 voices and 2 different effects modules that were going into 4 mixer channels, and the 2 effects heads across the whole device. So yeah, this was cool. I mean, this whole rig fit in a backpack, which was pretty amazing. And as I mentioned, people were commenting how good it sounded, which I give all the credit to the mixer. So could replace your Mackie. Yeah, it depends on which Mackie, and it depends on what you're using it for. But it doesn't really replace anything as a live performance mixer, because there really aren't any live performance mixers for electronic music. There are DJ mixers that people use for this, and there are studio mixers that people use for this, but there are no real proper hardware live performance mixers out there that are non-Eurorack. So that's what, yeah, it doesn't replace anything. It has its own home. The sidechain is very cool. Yeah, it's great to have that built in. The guerrilla style of the smaller setup. Yeah, it was a very guerrilla setup, especially if you look at, I don't know if you can see in the picture. On the far left, there's a module hanging out. The power supply failed in that case the day of the show. And so I went and bought a external power supply with a flying bus board, and I only had 2 HP that I could fit it, and it was 4 HP. So I just left it hanging out while I played. So yes, it was very guerrilla. It was not the prettiest setup, but it sounded good. So anyway, let's see what else. Filter character. I'll let Adam talk about that, because he designed the filter character, so he can put that in there. I can tell you the filter sounds amazing, but character, I don't know. What would you compare it to, Adam? Is there other filters out there that you would say have a similar character? Pre-fader outs, or is it pre or post? It is pre-fader, post gain, and post EQ. So not post effects, because the effects are sends. And so the effects are leaving that channel going to an effect. The effects aren't actually in that channel. They're not insert effects per channel. They're sends per channel. And that's the thing is pre-fader is because you would want to get that multi-track of your performance and then take that into your DAW, and then you would add in whatever effects you wanted to and add in your, kind of fades and all of that stuff. And if you wanted to record with your actual performance and your movements and how you brought things in and out, how you use the filter and how you use the sends, then you would just record your master out. In that case, you get it all. I have an old 24 channel Soundcraft desk that's way too much desk for me these days. First glance, this is checking a lot of the boxes. It is. It is. I mean, I think personally, I'm excited to have this as a small studio mixer as well. Because of those outputs and the way I record out, it works ideal. And then you're just kind of building muscle memory in your same workflow that you have all the time. And when it comes time to go from studio to live performance, you just disconnect it from your studio, chuck it in your backpack, and you go. And then you set it up, and you're performing on the thing that you're always using. The only way you can do that is if you've got a DJ mixer in your studio, or maybe you're using a Big Six in your studio, but then you've got Big Six has big right in the name. So to take the Big Six to a show is just not practical unless it's a local show. But like most of my shows, probably 80% of my shows, I have to take a plane. So there's no way I'm traveling with a full-size DJ mixer or a Big Six. And that's one reason why I have my whole mixer set up in my modular. But this would allow me to do a non-modular gear performance where I could bring, Electron boxes or synths or, my black box or whatever, and do a performance with that and still use a proper performance mixer that I can use my own and take it with me. So, yeah. Alongside the Hapex, kind of like a double-headed system for sequencing, mixing, with a few. Yeah, as I mentioned before, for me, the two keys to a hardware setup is your sequencer to send information out and your mixer to gather that information back up again. And then what's in between those things is totally up to you. Right. And you mix and match. You could put a push 3 between them. You could put a whole bunch of little synths. You could get all those little 1010 mini synths. You could get a bunch of the little Roland IRA boxes and have a huge capable setup that you could just put everything into a backpack. It's pretty amazing. And then you have it coming through a full size, quality mixer and being sequenced from a really good quality sequencer like a Hapax or an Oxy One or a Torso T1 or whatever. So anyway, what else? How many outs? So there's outs in general. There is a pre-fader individual out per channel, which is those 3.5 millimeter stereo outputs that you see at the top of each channel strip. So that's the individual outs per channel. Then you have your main outs. You have your effects send outs, which also have returns. And you have 2 stereo bus outputs, A and B, with returns as well. So a lot of different options for outputs, depending on what you want to do with it. It is very easy to drive live. I can tell you, I played a whole show on it after having used it for less than an hour. So yeah, very good. Okay, here's Adam's opinion on the filter. We're trying to achieve while working on the circuit is that it sounds a little brighter than the Zone 92 filter, but more buttery than the Pioneer. Yeah, the Pioneer is pretty harsh, but dramatic, dynamic. The Zone 92 is subtle. And so I get that. That's pretty cool that it's in between the two. Yeah, that's very, very cool. Yes, there is lots of utility here. That's the thing. This is a tool. This is the thing that you'll use. It's not, we're not making a synth that sounds pretty. This is the tool that you use with all the other stuff, right? So that's what this was made for. Tons of utility. And it's cool to have things like, the filter and the sidechain and all that stuff built in, while remaining very customizable with your own effect sends. your own bus processing. I mean, if you want to get really complex and do your own kind of drum bus, you can assign all your drums to A, send them out through your bus processing of your drum bus, and then come back in. Somebody asked earlier about using an auto boom or a analog heat or heat plus effects. The bus processing would be a great use for either of those, because you might want to just bus process your drums, and putting the drums through a really good saturator, limiter, or compressor or any of that stuff, just those instruments, pretty cool. You know, it would be like having a glue compressor just on those. You can just have a tiny little bit, and you don't have to worry about all of the compression setting changes that you would have through your live performance on all of your instruments. But if you wanted to narrow that down to a select few that you would send out through a bus and process in a certain way, or if you, instead of wanting to use effect sends into a fully wet effect unit, you could send out on the bus through a multi-effect like the analog heat plus effects or the H90 or the H9, or any one of those, a Zoya, for example. You could have that going out on the bus and then control everything within that instrument, right? So you could engage or disengage the use of the effects. You can change from one chain to another depending on which multi-effect you were using. So a lot of different ways that you can use the different inputs and outputs on this to customize to your setup, whatever it is. Okay. What else? Any other questions? Let's see. Speaking of a little more utility, there's an aux. Oh yeah, there's an aux input that can be added to the mix and filter all, plus a record output that isn't affected by the master knob. So those are both, if you look right above the center section with the LEDs for level for the main, there's three TRS inputs. One is sidechain input, the external sidechain, if you don't want a normal to track one. The other is an aux in, so you could have a whole other mixer inputting into that. You could have just your iPhone playing tracks. You could, whatever you wanted going into that. And then the other one is a TRS record out for your master, which is also pretty cool. Let's see. Mutes clickless. You mean like audible click? There is no audible click, at least that I heard in the mutes, but Adam can answer if that's is that a particular type of mute, Adam? Clickless mutes? But no, they're the same. If I'm not wrong, they're the same mutes that are on the Xcelon modular mixer, which I love as well. How many inputs and outputs just joined? So 8 stereo channels. Each of those stereo channels can be dual mono, and then you put it into crossfade mode, and the panning can be set to crossfade between the 2 mono inputs. So you can have up to 16 mono inputs or 8 stereo inputs. Outputs, there's a pre-fader output per channel, main stereo output, 2 effect send outputs with returns, and 2 mix bus sends with returns as well. Mutes are VCA based, so there's a micro slew and thus no clicks. There you go. Always count on Adam to have the actual answer, the technical answer, as I'm sitting here like, oh, I don't know. I just use them. And he actually will tell you how things work, which is good. So that way I don't have to learn that stuff. That's why there's smart people like that. So people like me don't have to learn all that stuff. All right. What else? Anything else? Question-wise? Thank you guys for all the questions, by the way. This is great. And I think it's the best way to get the info out there. This live stream will be posted on my channel as well. So this way people can get info. And I'm pretty sure I set it up to replay the chat. So your questions will be in the replay as well, which is pretty cool. So anything else? Or did we go over it all? Is it totally clear now? Totally understood? I think we got it all. Oh, one thing we didn't talk about, there's going to be a little switch inside one of the side panels where you can switch, like on the Allen and Heaths, you can switch the individual channel metering the LED light metering to be either pre-fader or post-fader. I like it post-fader, but then there's some people that like it pre-fader so they know what level it's going to be before they bring the level up. So is the filter going to all the outputs? So the filter is assignable to each channel by going to either A or B, and then you set the filter to filter either the A channels or the B channels. So you can do 1 or up to 8 on any channel, and the filter will do that. And then underneath the master volume, up next to the meters up at the top, there's a filter all switch, which is an override. So you can set it to filter certain things, and then override it with filter all, and then take the filter all off, and it goes back to the way you have those switches engaged. So it's a way that you can change it up during performance. So it can be either assigned to 1 or more channels at the same time, or it can be assigned to filter all as an override. Okay. Is there a way to route a looper in there? Yeah, absolutely. Because you have those the A and B bus insert send and returns. So if you were to have a looper there, you could assign something to A and have your looper on the A output with the return back in. So then you could do through your performance, send things to A, to your looper, engage the looper, do your loop, and then play it back. And then you've got volume on the return of that send. So yeah, there's definitely a way to route a looper in there. There's multiple ways to route a looper in there, actually. Yeah, so you can loop the signals of a channel by assigning a channel to a bus and having the looper on that bus. Or if you always wanted it on a single channel and you didn't want to change up the assignment, you could just use the pre-fader output of that and have that go to the looper and loop that. You wouldn't get the compressor, but you would get the EQ and the gain from that. So yes, there's multiple ways that you could attach a looper. And if you wanted to loop your entire output, you've also got the record out, which could be sent to a looper as well. So lots of different ways that you could send this to a looper, for sure. Yeah, being able to assign things just with the flick of a switch to a looper. So if you just had it on a bus and you didn't know what you wanted to loop, like let's say you always looped your vocals, you could just put the looper always on track 8 where the mic input is, and then you just always loop that channel. It'd be easy. But if you wanted to, like at one moment in your performance, you wanted to loop a certain device, assign it to A, you've got your looper on the A output, loop it, and then take that assignment off. And then if you wanted to overdub in that looper, you could send something else out to A and overdub that. And then you could change it. And then if you wanted to overdub again, you could send, it's just a matter of how you wanted to assign it. But yeah, that using those buses for loopers would be great. Be a great way to do it. Can't remember if this was shared. Do we know when pre-orders are opening? Yes, in about a month. It looks like I think they said end of February, 1st of March is when they're hoping to get pre-sales up and running. And judging by the response that we've gotten from this, I would highly recommend going with the pre-sales just because I feel like these are going to be flying out faster than they can be assembled. So transitions in mind when talking about loopers. Yeah. So if you wanted to, you could loop, if you would go out the record out, that's those 3 that are just above the meters. The one on the far right is the record out. So that is a stereo main record out. So if you wanted to record and have your looper be your kind of master in order to be able to do that, you could record that. And then you could have that come back in through any of the inputs. You could have it coming back into an individual channel. You could have it coming back in through that return from the looper. Or yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do it. Yeah. So, what is this product and mixer? Yes, it is a mixer. I don't really understand the question. Yes, it is a mixer. It is a fully analog mixer for hardware live performance. Oh yeah, I guess you can come back in on the aux. I didn't even think about that. So yeah, out through the record out and back in through the aux. And that way you could set that up. And again, this gets back to why it's important to have faders on a mixer like this, is that if you wanted to bring that loop back in and take all your faders down, you can do that, right? And you can bring them all down at the same time. The switches are not backlit, no. But if I'm not wrong, Adam was talking about inside the switches, there's a felt, like a black felt. And I think he's talking about switching that out for a gray one so you can see the position of the switch on the final models. That was a discussion, so don't hold me to that. I don't know if that's an actual thing, but I know that. Well, there you go. He just answered. Yes, a light colored felt to make it nice. Yeah, so it makes it so they're easy to see. But they are the white writing on the black background is really easy to see, even in any kind of lighting. So it was great to perform on. Price again. They're shooting for about the price of an Octatrack, more or less. It's not finalized yet, but Octatracks are like $17.99, I think. So that's kind of the goal. But that's going to get finalized before pre-sales open up, so that they know what the construction is going to cost, like how much labor goes into each build and all that kind of stuff. So, yep. Does it add gain to dirty the signal? Yes, every channel has a gain that's kind of a clean gain, gain and trim, but it also has a drive mode. If you look underneath the gain switch, it says drive. And if you engage that, that's an analog drive circuit. So you can actually dirty the signal by channel. So it's not like a main output analog drive. It's actually an individual analog drive per channel. So if you have things that you do want to add drive to, you can do that. Yep, individually per channel, and you can dial it in. And it's dialed in so that when you add drive, you're adding gain and drive together when it's in that mode. So it's like clean gain or drive gain. It's kind of like the way it feels when you play it. Can it do a gabber kick? It can do a gabber kick if you put a gabber kick into it. It doesn't actually do a kick, but yes, you can put a gabber kick into it and it'll do a gabber kick. I mean, you can, if you're talking about putting in a clean 909 and driving it like the old school gabber guys did, sure. Put in a clean 909, turn on the drive circuit and jack it all the way up to the top. And yeah, it sounds good. I prefer to do it the other way, where I will use my Ohm Force Bohm module, which can do a great gabber kick, and I'll just put that in rather than trying to make it with the mixer. But you could if you wanted to, for sure. For sure. Also insert a great drive, extra analog heat, an ARB. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you wanted to saturate that, and that's kind of the best use for me of the mix bus, is so like adding in like an analog heat or an Ohm Force Bohm or something that is a really good bus processor is great for that. And then using the effect sends for like your master, for your more performative effects, right? Like an H90 or an H9. Those would be great for this, or a Zoya. Stereo channels or mono channels. 8 stereo, but each can be dual mono, so up to 16 mono. And it can be done in different amounts. So like on this rig that I played in LA, channel 2 was coming from 2 different modules in my case. So I had the Archer's rig and the WMD clutch that are both kind of hi-hat, high percussive modules. So I put them both into the same channel, each one mono inputs, because they were each mono modules, each one into a mono input. And then when you engage the mono mode, which is, if you look right above Q, you've got, right above Q, you've got X fade, which is crossfade mode. And what that does is it turns your balance, your pan, into a crossfade between your 2 mono signals. And so, so that's why I wanted to show it to you on the other one, is because I used a combination. So I'll have like a mono kick with a mono rumble two mono hats. So all of those are able to be cross fadeable. And then I've got, stereo effects, or I've got a stereo channel, a stereo vocal coming from a sampler. And so you would use stereo channels for those. Or you can just input just a mono channel. It doesn't have to be dual mono channels. So yeah, but is 8 stereo or up to 16 mono inputs, depending on how you want to use them. So this is great for what I'm building. Cool. It's great for what I do too. It's great. And I think that's going to be kind of the magic of this thing, is that it's really great for a lot of uses. It's not like there's a lot of things that they can kind of do what you want, but they're missing some things and you have to make up for it. And it's like, you have to find all these different workarounds. The idea with this was that we wanted it, again, like I said at the beginning, we wanted it to have all the things you need for electronic live performance and none of the stuff you don't need, right? That's why there's not a 4-band EQ. You don't need a 4-band EQ for live performance, right? That's why it has a compressor per channel, because you do need that. So 16 channel mono mixer hidden away inside. Yes, cleverly disguised as an 8-channel stereo mixer. Yes, I agree with you, Dusty Rhodes. This is long overdue. That's why I'm so enthusiastic and so proud to have been a part of this process, because I feel like, give the people what they want. This is that thing that we've all been asking for, and it just hasn't existed. And it seems so obvious that it should have, but maybe it just didn't make sense for these bigger companies to make something like this. But and I doubt that they would have been putting in the effort to make it specifically tailored, because they would want to have it. The DJ mixer companies, they're trying to appeal to the 750 million DJs that there are in the world, instead of the 750,000 hardware live performers. So yes, more than 16, since you can use the 2 effects returns, A and B returns, and aux for more inputs. That's true. I totally agree. It looks huge. Are you talking size wise, or huge? Like, damn, that's going to be huge. Size wise, there you go. That's it. Next to an Oxy One, a 3U 84 HP case, and a 1010 black box. It's the same width as an Octatrack and about an inch deeper. So, yes. Great inventors and products find the need and fill the void 100%. And that's what I was saying before. Too many of these companies look for the cheapest way they can make a thing, and then they try to convince you why you need it or why it's correct. And it's like, this is, we started off with what do we actually need, and do it in the best way possible. So that's where this came from. So yes, size, it is, in my opinion, it couldn't be smaller and still be functional as a performance mixer with this much stuff, because then you'd end up with like all these little like micro knobs that you can't actually play live in a live setting. And we didn't want to make it any bigger, because we wanted to make it portable and backpackable and able to bring out to play at a show. And so it's that mix of both. It's same footprint as a Hapex, more or less, Hapex sequencer. And like I said, same width as an Octatrack and about an inch deeper front to back than an Octatrack. And it's 2 inches high in the back and 1 inch high in the front. So it's it looks big in pictures, and it was surprisingly small when I saw it at first. Yeah, took me off guard. Actually, I expected it to feel and look much bigger, but yeah, it's not. And like I said, on next week's stream, I'll have it, so I'll be able to show you kind of comparison wise to other things, so you can see what the size really is. Okay. All right. What other questions before we call it a day here? Sorry for the rough start and all the audio issues, but yeah. Heavily inspired by the 08 and saddened by chord failure to make it great, which they certainly could have done. I agree. I think it's one of those things that I think, at least for me personally, I like the idea of the Zero 08 more than I liked the Zero 08. I was like, oh, what a clever, interesting way to kind of push the envelope. And I love to see companies, especially big companies, pushing into weird kind of esoteric, creative instruments. That's really cool. But that one, just not for me. It was just not my style. But whatever. It's like I think it's interesting technology. Enough space between the knobs is nice when playing. Yeah, that's for me. I can tell you what I played it last Thursday in LA for that show. It was it feels great, right? And that's I've told Adam this before. One of my favorite things about the regular Xcelon, the Eurorack Xcelon, is that I love the way it feels to play because it feels comfortable like a DJ mixer. It doesn't feel cramped like most Eurorack mixers do. And this is the same. This feels comfortable to play. The things are the right size. It's not too big and it's not too small. Like I said, the TX6, if that was 4 times the size, I would love it, but it was just too small. And so it's not functional. And then you get things that are too big to travel with, like DJ mixers and like a Big Six or things like that. Like a lot of the Mackie mixers, they're just too big to travel with. So this is what we felt like was like the best compromise with that. And we really started, it was funny, we started with that kind of Octatrack footprint because we're like, well, enough people are transporting that this would be transportable. So now what can we fit into that to make it the thing that we want it to be? So how do the faders feel? The faders feel outstanding. They feel exactly like the faders on the Xcelon Eurorack module, because if I'm not mistaken, they are the same faders that's on the Xcelon Eurorack module. But yeah, they feel great. It's very comfortable and fun to play for sure. When available this summer, shipping this summer. And summer is vague enough that it could be early summer or late summer, but shooting for early summer. And the thing is too, there'll be the pre-sale batch that goes out. And then it's going to take a bit to get all of them made because these are all made by hand. And so it's, these aren't pressed out of an assembly line in a factory. So they take a minute to build. And so that's the time. The version that I used in LA was a 100% completely fully functioning prototype. I know there's going to be some little tweaks and some little ads that Adam's working on, but already everything that was there already works completely. Now it's just a matter of getting all the parts made and getting them assembled. So that is that. Cool. Well, I think we'll call it a day then. Thank you guys so much for tuning in for the stream. I know this was a talky one, but that was the whole point, is I wanted to get the word out about this thing. I've been super proud to have collaborated in this and couldn't be more excited to get it out there to everybody. If you have other questions, feel free to shoot me a message on, either put it in the comments of this video or send me a message on Instagram or whatever. It's kind of the easiest way to reach me. So yeah, feel free to shoot out any questions you have about it, and I'll answer whatever I can, and whatever I can't, I will defer to Adam at Boredbrain. But thank you guys very much. I appreciate you tuning in, and yeah, I look forward to you guys all getting a chance to try this thing, because it's a lot of fun. It is definitely a lot of fun. Cool. Well, thank you guys very much, and hope to see you next time. Take care.